Bidenomics works. Yes, it does. Bidenomics works. Well, that is if you believe that tax dollars should be taken away from the states by the federal government, shuffled around Washington by technocrats and bureaucrats, then for some reason distributed back to the states for the state's purpose where the money originated in the first place. Oh, and of course, the federal government picking winners and losers by rewarding allied companies with massive grants, and of course, the expansion of the size and scope of the government itself. Sound about right? I mean, I get it. That's not in the brochure. The brochure is just nothing more than, there we go, Joe Biden's talking points about the middle up and bottom out. I don't even know what that means. And I'm pretty good at this. And when they talk about investing in America, that's not the government's job, because the government would be investing your money. Investing is what we do in the private sector. Now, Joe Biden would have you believe that all his central planning Euro-Marxist plans are working.
And guess what? Bidenomics is working. When I took office, the pandemic was raging and our economy was reeling. Supply chains were broken, millions of people unemployed, hundreds of thousands of small businesses on the verge of closing after so many had already closed. Literally hundreds of thousands on the verge of closing. Today, the U.S. has the highest economic growth rate leading the world economies since the pandemic, the highest in the world. As Dick said, with his help, we've created 13.4 million new jobs. More jobs in 2 years than any president has ever made in 4, in 2. And folks, it's no accident. That's Bidenomics in action. Bidenomics is about building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down.
You would have to believe that Joe Biden somehow saved us from the pandemic. Like he swooped in and changed everything. First of all, he had nothing to do with the development of the vaccine, which should have been administered voluntarily. But it was Democrat governors and Democrat mayors that shut down those businesses, causing the job losses, not Donald Trump. But now that we've gotten away from the pandemic, Joe Biden wants to ride the wave and go, look at me, look at all the jobs I'm creating with all these big government programs. Who actually thinks that's efficient? And where does any of this reside as a federal responsibility in the Constitution to create jobs? Right. If useless Marxist leftists say it, it's for the greater good, then the Constitution could be damned. Now, it's not enough that the Democrats want to control health care, education, and even charging stations. Now they want to spend massive amounts of your tax dollars to give the internet to everyone.
And today, we're taking another big step toward Internet for All. We're announcing over $40 billion to be distributed to 50 states, Washington, D.C., and territories to deliver high-speed internet in places where there's neither service or it's too slow. And folks, it includes rural communities like Appalachia, towns that Joe represents. It includes tribal lands from Alaska to the Dakotas, coastal towns from Hawaii to the Pacific Northwest. It also includes suburban communities, even cities, neighborhoods, and where there's a lot of feature you think is automatic, where some still have to use dial-up connections to get online. The funding for each state and territory is based on their specific needs, how many of the residents currently lack internet access, and what it will cost to provide that access. With this funding, along with other federal investments, we're going to be able to connect every person in America to reliable, high-speed internet by 2030.
Again, where is this in the Constitution that the government is supposed to provide these things? And I lived in West Virginia in 1998, and we had internet. He makes it sound like this is, 2003. Not even 2003, 1993. I don't even know what he's talking about here. But Bidenomics, not very popular. Does it matter that 70% of you don't agree with him? Pfft, no.
43% of Americans approve of his leadership on the economy. He's sitting with a 43% approval rating. That is the highest he's seen since August.
If you actually ask people about the components of Bidenomics specifically, you get poll numbers that are north of 70%, which in this partisan world is kind of unheard of. If you ask them about the Infrastructure Act, investing in highways, in bridges, in ports, in water systems. I mean, go to Flint, Michigan, and ask people how they feel about clean water, getting rid of lead pipes, something this president and vice president have pledged to do 100%, to get all of the lead pipes out of America's towns and cities. If you ask people about the quality of their jobs right now, that's polling at the highest level in 36 years.
Again, city water, city government's job, city, not federal. All that is happening here is the Democrats are once again claiming they're investing in America. That's not the government's job, because what's really happening is that those jobs are tied into the government. And that's what the Democrats want, you see. Everything tied to the government. They don't like the idea of the private sector being beholden to the market. They want businesses to be beholden to them. We are so far away from the likes of John F. Kennedy. I could sit here and play you clips of Ronald Reagan. You know that he was a fiscal conservative. I could even play you some clips of Bill Clinton back in the early 90s when he wanted to sound like a fiscal conservative. But there was a time when Democrats understood free market economics and that low taxes actually boosted the economy. I know, counterintuitive. Collect more taxes, get more revenue. Well, raising taxes doesn't mean you always get the revenue. And you know who knew this? John F. Kennedy.
The worst deficit comes from a recession. And if we can take the proper action in the proper time, this can be the most important step we could take to prevent another recession. That is the right kind of a tax cut, both for your family budget and the national budget, resulting from a permanent basic reform and reduction in our rate structure, a creative tax cut, creating more jobs and income, and eventually more revenue.
I'm sorry, Bidenomics means raising taxes, printing money, borrowing money to transfer it out in the form of grant programs like the CHIPS Act, where the government's going to invest in these things. That's how they create jobs, according to Biden. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more of JFK, sounding a lot like, well, me.
Such a bill will be presented to the Congress for action next year. It will include an across-the-board, top-to-bottom cut in both corporate and personal income taxes. It will include long-needed tax reform that logic and equity demand. And it will date that cut in taxes to take effect as of the start of next year, January 1963. The billions of dollars this bill will place in the hands of the consumer and our businessmen will have both immediate and permanent benefits to our economy. Every dollar released from taxation that is spent or invested will help create a new job and a new salary. And these new jobs and new salaries can create other jobs and other salaries, and more customers and more growth for an expanding American economy.
Cut taxes, roll back regulations, free up capital, allow the consumer market to spend, and you will create more jobs and more salaries and more revenue for the government. That is the opposite of Bidenomics, which is raise taxes, plunge the nation into debt, give more power to technocrats, bureaucrats, and grant programs, and make as many people as you can be dependent on the government so they rely on you, the political class. We are so far away from this. But yeah, Bidenomics works if you want a totally inefficient, system where people pay taxes in the state, the money goes to Washington, they have to beg for it to come back, the technocrats and the bureaucrats pick their winners and losers, send the money back, and the government controls the charging stations, the internet poles, the windmills, the solar panels, housing, healthcare, and education. You name it. Euro-Marxism. That's Bidenomics. And that's my argument.